7 warning signs of intestinal cancer or colorectal cancer. Does your intestine show any of these symptoms that you haven't noticed yet? Find out if your intestine is at risk. It's possible that you're experiencing these symptoms without realizing it. Today, I'll present to you the 7 warning signs of intestinal cancer, also known as colorectal cancer. And why is it so important for you to understand more about this type of tumor? Because besides being the third most common type of cancer, it's the second deadliest. Colorectal cancer, which includes intestinal cancer, is one of the leading causes of cancer death worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, colorectal cancer accounts for 9.2% of cancer deaths.
In 2020, the total number of people diagnosed with cancer reached 19.3 million, with 10 million people losing their lives to the disease. Projections suggest that the number of people diagnosed with cancer will continue to increase in the coming years, and it will be almost 50% higher in 2040 than in 2020. But believe me, it's possible to stay out of these frightening statistics, and this video is the right tool to help you.
So, pay attention until the end. This video is divided into 2 parts. In the first part, I will present the signs and symptoms of colorectal cancer that you can clearly see or feel something is wrong, in other words, the warning signs. The second part is even more important because I will talk about prevention and some measures that can drastically reduce your risk of intestinal cancer, teaching you what new habits you should adopt and what types of foods you should eat to avoid this silent disease.
In this conversation, I'll also talk about the dreaded polyps and what you'll need to do to avoid them. And also, why are cases of colorectal cancer increasing in younger and younger people under 50 years old? This is a very comprehensive video, developed by a specialized medical team and explaining everything about colorectal cancer in a simple and straightforward way, so stay until the end to not miss any detail. And of course, go ahead and like this video so that this content reaches more people who don't have access to doctors or hospitals, and also share it with your friends and family.
A simple gesture of yours can help save many lives. Take the opportunity and tell me in the comments, do you know anyone who has had intestinal cancer? Write down below. But after all, what are the 7 warning signs you should be aware of that may indicate that something is wrong with your intestine? The 7th symptom is change in bowel habits. It's very important for you to know what your bowel habits are.
Some people go to the bathroom right after breakfast. On the other hand, there are those who have their physiological needs 2 or 3 times a day. And there are still those people who evacuate only 2 or 3 times a week. Have you ever stopped to analyze how your bowel movements are? If you notice changes in bowel movement, it's time to be on alert. Changes in bowel movement are common with age, so this isolated symptom is not so alarming.
However, be aware, because if these changes are progressing, it is essential to seek medical help. Approximately 65% of people diagnosed with intestinal cancer suffer from changes in bowel movement. These changes in bowel habits can vary from person to person and are directly related to the size, location, and stage of the patient's tumor.
Another common characteristic is in the stools. They can change in consistency, color. The person may start going to the bathroom more often, or, in other cases, they may drastically reduce these visits. The main change to be observed is that the person begins to have diarrhea, but it's not caused by a virus and lasts more than a few days. After this period, they become constipated, then have diarrhea again. Something might be wrong.
6th symptom, blood and stool. This is why you should always be attentive to the appearance of your stools. But how so, blood in the stool? What kind of bleeding should be observed carefully? The large intestine is segmented into different parts: the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid, followed by the rectum and the anus. A peculiarity of the right side of the colon is that it is longer and stools are more liquid due to the water absorption function the colon performs. Therefore, if the tumor is located on the right side, in the ascending colon, we generally won't present obstruction symptoms. The tumor can cause more bleeding, resulting in anemia or lead to changes in the color of stools, making them black like tar, a phenomenon known as melena, which has a quite unpleasant odor. On the other hand, on the left side, in the descending colon and sigmoid, the colon is narrower and stools tend to be better formed when they arrive.
In this region, more visible bleeding can occur, which is noticeable when you defecate and drips into the toilet or when wiping with toilet paper. However, it's important to consider that other conditions may cause this symptom, such as hemorrhoids, anal fissure, or even the consumption of beetroot, which can change the color of stools to red. However, it's crucial to ensure that it's not something serious.
One cannot presume that the bleeding is due to your hemorrhoids. Bleeding can vary in intensity, from small amounts of blood in stools to severe hemorrhages. And why can this cause blood in stools? It may be due to tumor ulceration, bleeding from a small blood vessel that irrigated the tumor, injury to the intestine, or even due to excessive straining that increases pressure on the intestinal wall and causes bleeding. I'll repeat, if you see blood in the stools, it's important to see a doctor. It doesn't necessarily mean cancer, but it's better to make sure with a healthcare professional.
The fifth symptom is belly pain. If you've never had abdominal pain and now you're feeling strong cramps that don't go away and come and go, or even pain when defecating because of a tumor in the lower part of the rectum, it's important to seek medical help. It might just be a matter of excess gas due to changes in diet, such as increased fiber intake. But if you haven't done anything different and the pain persists, it's important to consult a doctor because it could be a symptom of intestinal cancer.
The fourth symptom is fatigue and tiredness. It's not the feeling of being tired from lack of sleep. It's fatigue that persists for a long period, 2 weeks, a month. In the case of intestinal cancer, this fatigue may be due to occult anemia. As I mentioned, the tumor may be bleeding slowly, leading to iron deficiency anemia. It's important to investigate. One of the main causes of unexplained anemia is intestinal cancer. And no, you don't have anemia? Cancer cells consume a lot of energy to multiply rapidly. This can lead to exhaustion. Additionally, they may be consuming your nutrients, which contributes to chronic fatigue and tiredness. So, don't ignore this symptom.
The third symptom is abdominal bloating. Swelling in the abdominal region can be a frequent symptom of intestinal cancer. There are several reasons for this. It may be due to the tumor partially or completely obstructing the intestine, which can cause gas and stool buildup. Additionally, the tumor may make it difficult for food and liquids to pass, also contributing to abdominal swelling. This excess gas can cause abdominal pain, such as cramps or even constant pain, so it's best not to ignore it. There are several reasons for abdominal swelling and pain, but it's always wiser to consult a doctor if you're experiencing unusual or frequent abdominal swelling or pain.
The second symptom is unexplained weight loss. If you're following a diet and have lost weight, that may be considered normal. I'm referring to weight loss that doesn't have an obvious cause. For example, you weighed 60 kilos and now you're 55 or 53 kilos. There has been no change in your diet, you're not depressed, and you're not exercising more than before. Weight loss due to intestinal cancer can have various causes. First, the tumor can affect the body's ability to absorb nutrients and calories, as if it were a parasite sucking up nutrients for itself. Furthermore, the tumor can produce certain cytokines, such as TNF-alpha and interleukins 1 and 6, which decrease appetite and cause weight loss. The tumor can also increase the body's energy expenditure, leading to the loss not only of fat but also of muscles. Additionally, the tumor can obstruct the intestine, causing nausea and vomiting.
The first symptom is a feeling that your intestine has not been completely emptied, known as tenesmus. Even after a complete evacuation, you may feel that something remains stuck, requiring a return to the bathroom. This sensation of incomplete evacuation is common in cases of intestinal cancer because the tumor can partially or completely obstruct the intestine, giving the impression that there are stools present, when in fact it's the tumor itself. This obstruction can also cause changes in the shape of stools, making them thin and ribbon-like as they pass through the middle of the tumor, resulting in this peculiar appearance.
It's important to note that many people with colon cancer do not have symptoms in the early stages of the disease. Therefore, while the absence of symptoms is comforting, it's essential to be aware of risk factors and consider undergoing screening tests to detect the presence of intestinal polyps. These polyps are precancerous lesions of colon cancer and develop on the inner lining of the colon. If the cells of the intestinal mucosa undergo mutations, they can turn into polyps in the colon. Most polyps do not become cancerous, but some can become cancerous over time. It usually takes about 10 years for a polyp to turn into cancer if it's not detected and removed. There are several risk factors for intestinal cancer, and why is it becoming more common in young people?
Firstly, age. The risk of intestinal cancer significantly increases with aging as our immune defenses weaken. Therefore, a polyp that was inactive can become cancerous due to low immunity. Secondly, inflammatory bowel diseases, such as Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, increase the risk of cancer. 1 in 5 patients with ulcerative colitis has a chance of developing colorectal cancer. Thirdly, genetic syndromes, such as Lynch syndrome, which predisposes to intestinal cancer, and familial adenomatous polyposis, which forms multiple polyps and increases the risk. It's also important to consider the family history of intestinal cancer. Additionally, taller people have a higher risk. These are risk factors that cannot be changed. And what about the risk factors that you can modify? Smoking. Smoking not only increases the risk of lung cancer, but also stomach, intestine, mouth, bladder, and others. Alcohol consumption. It also increases the risk. Sedentary lifestyle. It's important to exercise. Obesity. Diet poor in fruits and vegetables, especially ultra-processed foods, which besides having few fibers, contain many chemicals harmful to health. Also, avoid excessive consumption of processed and red meats, as well as saturated fats. So, why is intestinal cancer increasing so much in younger people, leading the American Society to reduce the initial age for colonoscopies from 55 to 45 years for people with intermediate risk of the disease? Simply put, it's because many people are eating inadequately, consuming many processed foods and few natural foods.
Many people are also leading a sedentary lifestyle, which has contributed to the increase in overweight and obesity. Additionally, screening tests have started to be performed earlier and more widely, identifying cases early. So, how can you protect yourself against intestinal cancer? Here are 7 tips, with the last one being the most important.
1. Drink plenty of fluids, especially water, to keep the intestine functioning properly and avoid constipation. 2. Consume plenty of fruits and vegetables, rich in fiber and antioxidants, which speed up intestinal transit and improve intestinal flora health. 3. Reduce consumption of red meats, especially processed ones, which contain sodium and nitrites associated with increased risk of intestinal cancer. 4. Consider including dairy and derivatives in your diet, as recent studies suggest they may offer protection against intestinal cancer. However, if you have lactose intolerance or milk protein allergy, it's best to avoid these foods.
The 5th tip is to engage in physical activities and not stay sedentary. Physical exercises improve intestinal function, regulate hormones such as insulin and estrogen, reduce inflammation in the body, help maintain a healthy weight, and decrease stress. All of this contributes to cancer prevention. The 6th tip is to avoid alcohol and tobacco. And the 7th and most important tip is to have regular checkups. At the very least, it's recommended to do the fecal occult blood test, which can detect traces of blood that are not visible to the naked eye. But if you're over 45 years old and are at intermediate risk group, it's even more important to have a colonoscopy done. Why intermediate risk? Because in cases of high risk, such as a family history of intestinal cancer or Lynch syndrome, colonoscopy should be done at an earlier age.
The difference between colonoscopy and other screening methods is that it allows the detection and removal of polyps before they turn into tumors. In other words, you can identify and remove a polyp before it becomes cancer. How is a colonoscopy done? The most challenging part of the exam is the preparation, which involves completely cleaning the intestine. You'll need to take laxatives and go to the bathroom several times until the intestine is completely clean. During the exam itself, you'll be sedated to be more comfortable, so you won't feel anything. The doctor uses a thin tube with a camera at the tip to see inside the rectum and colon. First, they inject some air to have a better view. If they find a polyp, they remove it and send it for analysis. If they find a large tumor, they may do a biopsy. The exam takes 30 to 60 minutes.
And I want to emphasize again that colonoscopy is a crucial exam, as it can detect polyps before they become cancerous. Look at this interesting graph that shows how countries that perform screening tests have significantly reduced cases of colorectal cancer, saving many lives. This video is important for this reason. It's not to scare anyone, but to raise awareness about the importance of prevention. Detecting a polyp before it turns into cancer can prevent a lot of suffering, such as chemotherapy, radiation therapy, immunotherapy, among others. Early detection increases your chances of successful treatment. When colon cancer is found in the early stages, it can usually be cured in up to 90% of cases. The cost-benefit of colonoscopy is very high. That's why wealthy countries are reducing the age for the first exam. In the end, the government and health insurance save money. Diagnosing colon cancer early increases the chances of complete recovery and cure. So, don't wait. Take care of your intestinal health and keep your body healthy.
If you liked the video, remember to share it so that more people can have access to this important information. And what will be the next video you'll watch? Here are 2 recommendations. My video on how to eliminate hemorrhoids once and for all, and my video on a juice capable of regulating your intestine in a few days and helping to eliminate aged feces from you. We are the Intestinal Life Group, specialized in intestinal health, and you can find more content by accessing our channel page here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to receive more updates. Until the next video, and thank you very much, and see you next time.